Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newham Pensions Board meeting for the January 2026 period. I'm the chair, Tejanidhi Kashyap. I will announce the names of the attendees here, and then if you can raise your hand and mark your attendance, we can take it from there. So from the employer representatives, do we have Philippa? Thanks, Philippa. And do we have Sheila? Thank you. And from anyone else from the employer representatives, or is that it?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the employee representatives. We have Kathy and Alison. Hello, Alison. And Donford. Do we have Donford?
No.
Okay, so that's one absent. Okay. Great. Thank you. And in terms of the Newham officers, can I ask yourselves to introduce or raise your hands and introduce yourself?
Sorry, Marinissa Hussain here.
Hello. You're from the Democratic Services team. Great. And I see James. James. Do you have Jackie today? Or?
Jackie has started maternity leave now, so Alex, who is covering Jackie's maternity, is here today.
Thank you. And Alexandra?
That's me. Hello.
Hi. And I see Rakesh.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other guests or Newham officers, please introduce yourselves.
Yeah, hi, I'm Chris. Sorry, go on.
Go on, you could go, Chris.
Sorry. Chris Batts. I'm a relationship manager from LPPA to go through the report today.
Hi, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm Anya Hall. I'm the head of finance who looks after pensions, and Rakesh reports into me.
Okay. Are you new to the team? Did you join recently, Manish?
I'm not new to Newham, but I've been looking after pensions since Stephen retired last year.
Okay, it's nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. Anyone else? Can't flip the screen, so yeah, please shout if I missed any. Great. So thank you all for joining. So we have one absence. Comfort. Let's move to section 3 on the agenda, which is declarations of interest. In accordance with the members' code of conduct, this is the time for anyone to declare any disposable pecuniary interests or non-pecuniary interests they may have in any matter being considered in this meeting. So if there's any new conflicts or declarations, please shout now. No? Okay. Thank you. So minutes of the last meeting, the board agreed that the minutes of the last meeting held in November are an accurate record. So the board members, please kindly raise your hands to state that you're happy with the minutes. So that's Philippa and Sheila. And I think Donford's not there, but I think we still have quorum. So yeah, I can see Kathy and Alison. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So an admin point. No, I see that we are going to exclude press and public from this, so that I suppose we will stop recording. Do we want to do this at the end, or do we want to do it before?
If I just interject there, Chair. So essentially 2 of the appendices are exempt, but the actual performance update that I was just going to introduce Chris just to bring up. So it's previously requested a board, we kind of bring LPP along just to do sort of a general performance and update. So that's what Chris is going to present. Just a couple of the papers that we get circulated from LPP are exempt from public. So them appendices are exempt. So that would be kind of sort of sort of the final item if after Chris has presented and we've just kind of gone through the other the rest of the paper.
Sure.
Other than that, then no, we don't need to go exempt just yet.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's go to Chris to see what his update tells us.
Sorry, you want me to start now? Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Right. Sorry. So good evening, everybody. Nice to see some faces that I've not met before. I wasn't planning to go through page by page of the report that we produced. I'll just do an overall summary and pick out some of the highlights. Happy to answer questions during or throughout. I'll try and keep an eye out for hands if you go through. But yeah, please don't be afraid to ask questions. So a headline in terms of our casework and service level performance. So for Q2, so that's the period July through to September, we hit 98.6% on the service levels. The target there is 95%, so we succeeded on target, so tracking nice and green on those. The other key service level metric is the contact centre. So the contact centre average wait time service level is 4 minutes. And for the quarter, we were 3 minutes and 32 seconds. That is quite high. It was a busy time during that period, and particularly August is the time when the benefit statements get issued. So across all of LPP, you know, we get an increased number of callers, and that increases the average wait time. And it's not necessarily during that period, it's just the volume. The complexity of queries around ABS can obviously sometimes take longer for the contact centre agents to talk through, and that obviously has an impact on the wait time. One of the other bits I just wanted to talk a little bit about today. So service levels are effectively the service agreement and the contractual piece, if you like, and dare I suggest that's sometimes a little bit of a tick box, but particularly so when we consider that the biggest issue or biggest thing that we all collectively want to achieve is a good member experience. So that's Newham Pension Fund and obviously us as administrators, that's our focus. So we look particularly at the retirements, certainly at the moment. We'll focus on other areas in the future as well. But the retirement experience is obviously key. We've got members that are waiting for their money and payments ultimately. So that journey needs to be positive for them. It's not perfect, but we have made good improvements, and I'll just talk through some of those. So the first part of the process, if you like, is being notified that someone has indeed retired. And we're reliant on employers providing that notification. So in the report, we talk about employer retirement notifications. And unfortunately, in Newham's case, the percentages aren't great of what we call on-time notification. So on time is an aspiration to have leaver notification at least 30 days prior to the date of leaving. Now, the thinking behind that is that you'll receive, if you're active to retirement, you'll receive your salary 1 month, and then hopefully you'd receive a pension benefit payment the following month, whether that's your lump sum or your pension. So that's the thinking behind the 30 days. And then it's 10% in Q2. So we're going to increasingly talk to Alex and other officers about how we can work with them together with employers to, it's not just telling them what you want, it's making them understand why we do it. It's important to take employers on that journey. And there's been a recent development, a technical development for a new online leaver notification form that went live in mid-December, and we're hoping that that's going to bring some improvements to that process. The form itself adds some simplification, so for the employer users to submit the form. It's also got some real-time checks in there on pay. So we know pay queries is one of the largest queries that can add delays with a to and fro between LPPA and employers to understand or validate pay. It does that in real time and allows an employer user to put comments in there if it exceeds a tolerance, for example. So ultimately that goes hopefully towards further improving elapsed time and better processing and timeliness for the members. We have started employer engagement with some of the large employers. So Newham Main Fund would be one of those. where we almost treat them like clients, and our engagement team are working closely with them, sharing some statistics, MI, etc., all targeted at getting this improvement to service. So the result of that is how many payments we can pay within 30 days with an on-time notification. And the good news, albeit the real numbers are quite low of retirement, so we achieved 100% in Q2. So where we get notified on time, we can pay quickly, and that's a positive. With the late notification, it depends how late. If it was a day late, then we've still got a chance. The service level for retirement is 10 days. So if everything's in order, we can still do it if they're notified late. And in August and September, we did manage to do that, 18.2% and just shy of 28% in September. But obviously, if you're months late in notifying, then of course we've got no chance. So that's just a continuation of that piece. All of that leads into customer satisfaction, which is another section in the quarterly report there. So we measure satisfaction of customers in two ways. The first is the contact center. So the overall contact center rating was 86% for Q2. That's slightly up on Q1, which was 80. So that's a good sign of an improvement. And then what you find is that the agents, which is the second part of that score, they scored 96.2. What you'll find is that the agents that deal with our calls are rated really quite highly, and they deal with members well. Perhaps the subject matter and the reason for calling is what denotes a slightly slower, a smaller percentage, I should say, for the overall experience. But they're good high percentages. In terms of the active retirement, some of the things I've alluded to already will influence satisfaction in that area. So the active retirements, we had a good response rate in Q2. So just to put some context around that, our comms and marketing manager has said anything between 30 and 40% on survey responses generally is deemed to be very good. So I think sometimes when you look at these pie charts and you see quite small slices, it doesn't look too great, but actually benchmark wise across surveys generally, as I say, is 30 to 40. So we're not far off, and I think Q2 was a good position. I think that's 34% return surveys, and of those 83% were satisfied or neutral. That's not bad. It's not perfect, and we'd like it to be a lot better than that, obviously. What we find when we look at verbatim comments, and we don't always get lots of verbatim, but what we do is tend to find that people's reason for dissatisfaction are the perceived delays or the time it takes to get their retirement benefits. And sometimes it's about the management of that expectation. We've pulled those out, and they're key themes that follow through to our complaints analysis. So it's consistent there, and on the improvements we're making, we'll ultimately reduce all of those and improve the satisfaction. So another way that we do engagement with our members, which isn't mentioned particularly in the report, but to pull out, is that we, if you weren't aware, we have a member panel. So this is a group of individuals that we that have opted or applied to form part of a panel that we engage with for their feedback on processes, tools, etc. So I can give you some examples to bring that to life. So the member panel 6 months ago was made up of hundreds of individuals across all of LPPA clients. That has grown significantly in the last 6 months to over 4,500 now. And you might be interested to note that 242 or 5% of those represent Newham. So I think in the scale of things, Newham's got a good representation on that panel. The makeup in terms of membership status, because I think that's quite important as well, 30% of those, 38% of those are active members, 12% are deferred, and 33% are pensioners. So again, not a bad snapshot. That's fairly consistent with all our clients. In August of this year, we surveyed them on Pensions Point. So Pensions Point is the online secure member portal where you can view your benefits as an individual. And from that survey, we got over 1,200 responses, which is good. We got an engaged member panel, I think is the key to pull out there. 81% were satisfied with Pension Point. 42% visit monthly, which surprised me. But then when you look that you've got a good pensioner representation, I think that explains it. Our pensioners do like to go and check that they've got a pay slip, as much as they're probably checking their bank as well to make sure the payments also hit. So that would be a lot of those regular visitors. 75% of respondents could find what they were looking for. So some of the takeaways, that's all positive results, but some takeaways for action are to look at improvements of further navigation, tooltips, and just speeding up the overall website performance. So there's some stuff we've taken away to look at on that. And just in terms of Pension Point, Newham itself, as at September, had 7.3 thousand registered members. More recently, I can tell you, I've putting together the December report, and that's gone up to 7.8 thousand. So that as a percentage is not one of our highest, if I'm honest. It's probably not one, it'll be one of the lowest. I don't think it's necessarily the lowest. So again, that's something I'd like to work with Alex and team on what we can do next year to increase your membership on and registrations on Pension Point. It's a good tool. They can run their calcs, make changes online. I think it's an education piece. So I'd like to look at what we have planned for next year as LPPA. There is some stuff that we will do in terms of writing and contacting members, but working with Alex to make sure it aligns with your communication strategy as well. I think we all want to make use of digital channels where we can. Conscious I'm going on a little bit. So just a couple of updates on some of the projects you'll be aware of. The first of which, really good news on the pensions dashboard. We are connected. That sounds great. It doesn't actually mean an awful lot in practice. It's the technical bit behind the scenes. We've ticked the box. We were slightly late in doing it, but we're there and there was no impact to members. Phase 2 of dashboard, we've got until we reckon the summer of 2027, and which will be the point that members actually go to a dashboard and look at it. So in the wider pensions industry, a lot of the smaller funds have still got to connect, etc. So we've got time to improve our data quality, both of what people will see and the matching criteria. But we've got quite a bit of time to do that. So we'll continue working on that, and we'll share plans with officers for that. Catherine, you got your hand up.
Chris, just regarding the leaver notification form, once someone has filled that in, what's the timescale for that? Like the process with that?
So if it's a retirement and goes through as a retirement, the retirement service level I think is 10 working days. So we would start to look at it during that time. But the SLs work on receipt of all required information. Another one of those things, which I forgot to mention, so thank you for the prompt, is the online retirement form. So a member is sent options initially. So it won't be 10 days to pay benefits, sorry, to be clear. We'll pick up the leaver form within 10 days. Then we'll assess it. We'll contact the member with a quote, if they've not already had one. That'll have all their retirement options in it and a link to an online retirement form, which is a relatively new form as well. And that has seen big improvements on turnaround time as well. Because it's online, it can reduce a lot of the errors and do the real-time validation and make sure things are completed correctly.
So just hypothetically, what if somebody was to log on to the pension portal and find that there's years missing? How would that work then? Years of service missing.
If there's a query on the service, when the administrator picks up the leaver form, then they'll be going back to the employers to validate the dates that we've got, or ask whether there's any missing period, or whether there's a reason that pays drop, like a maternity leave perhaps, or long-term absence and things like that. So where we've not been notified of things, because we get a monthly return as well, and the monthly returns are processed regularly, and they update pay, contributions, and look for periods of absence as well. So going forward, we have a lot of that, and we would query that at the time. So we'd be in a fairly good position. I think it tends to be for a lot of the older stuff.
Right, okay. I'm just mindful of where we've had we've had external companies that have 2P'd and 2P'd and 2P'd, and then there's been missing gaps with admitted body status, and there's been problems, and just members just trying to get to the bottom of their with their years of service, and that's the only thing I'm mindful of with that. But you saying it can be picked up?
It can be, and to be honest with you, it is annually. If you think of the annual benefit statement production process, we have a lot of fallout on those through queries that might have arisen during the year. So we have pretty good, well, very good actually, numbers of ABS that are produced. Over 95% of those due get issued generally every year. I don't know Newham's off the top of my head, but we will have had to have resolved queries or have confidence in the data we've got to be able to produce that statement. Even if we think it's right and a member has cause to query it, they can query it on an annual basis. So we're not always leaving everything to retirement. And I guess that's one of the things that we need to consider, collectively, is that the benefit statements are made available online, and we send communications to let a member know they are online. We've got 23% registered users. It suggests that not many are necessarily checking their benefit statements. So one of the messages and the encouragements to get people online is you can manage your contact details, keep us up to date. Another biggie is when people register, there's quite a significant number use their work email. Now, I know from my experience, people associate pension with work, therefore have this natural tendency to put, particularly when they're active, put their work email addresses in. Of course, when you leave, you can't then get your code for logging on to Pension Point. So that's another reason.
You say about you're better off doing your personal.
Yes, so that's the reason to keep your contact details up to date. Use that. Check your death benefit nominations to save delays in the sad event of deaths and bereavement cases. Get your quotes and retrieve your ABS every year. So there's lots of good reasons, and we'll use those in the cell to get people online.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. So that was dashboard. Some of the stuff that Catherine's kindly sort of prompted me towards in terms of another project we have is our efficiency and service improvement. I won't go through it all, but some of the things I've alluded to fall under that program, and it's very much about enhancing the member experience through use of automation in the system and better online forms which remove the bits of error and add simplification. Some of those forms in paper form can be very long and complex, and you don't always need every field filled out. And then finally, McLeod. You'll have heard a lot about McLeod over the last year, I'm sure. Just a bit of a recap. Annual benefit statements had to be produced this year with McLeod underpin values in. We managed to produce benefit statements for over 95% of the membership. I don't have the percentage to hand as to which included McLeod data. Where it didn't include the actual underpin data, the McLeod members were told that we believe them to be eligible and it will be in there for next year. I believe Newham used their discretion to extend the regulatory timeline to the 31st of August 26 for that McLeod information to be in, and we're on track for that. The other side of McLeod is what we call retrospective. So these are the people that have already had benefits paid out that we need to revisit and assess and make payment. So they fall into three categories. That's your pensioners, those that are receiving a pension currently, bereaved cases, deceased cases, and transfers. So the focus at the moment is the pensioners. We're revalidating our eligibility criteria. We're absolutely focused on making sure that any payments we make are right. Be nothing worse than doing a retrospective payment and that not being accurate. So we're taking a bit more time and care on those. To manage expectations, the bereaved and transfer cases could take years. Now we're reliant on tracking down an estate of a late or deceased member. They may not even be around anymore, and you've got the whole next of kin. That could get complicated. And on the transfer front, we're reliant on other funds, whether that's local government, public sector. Anecdotally, I hear NHS and civil service, for example, if you've had transfers from those, that they're quite a lot further behind on McLeod than we are in the local government space. So work continues on those, and because it goes on, you know, there are people that will not receive their underpin until they retire in potentially 15 to 20 years time. So one other aspect of that project is making sure that we've got the right business as usual processes in place, protecting us for the future, so that we're not constantly revisiting cases that have already been processed. And I might pause for breath there and leave it open to questions on anything I've mentioned or anything that I have perhaps not covered.
Thanks, Chris. That was a very useful update. Any questions for Chris? No. Okay. So, Chris, I had a couple of questions on.
Sure.
It's, I think, segue to what you discussed with Catherine now. It was about the employee retirement notification. So what can we do, or what can employers do now to improve that? Is there some kind of communication that
Well, it's interesting. So we've engaged with
needs to
employers.
go out?
Sorry. Yeah, we've engaged with a number of employers across a number of funds that we administer, and the themes and reasons are quite common. So one of the biggies is that there are two key ones that jump out for me. Firstly, a member and indeed an employer isn't always aware that when someone leaves that they are eligible for retirement. So the leaver form either doesn't get submitted for that because they think that they're just a leaver and it goes through on the interface. So that can add to delays. And the other thing, of course, is the notice period. It's an encouragement to those members that are considering retirement that just because you might be on a month's notice, can you give as much notice to your employer as possible? Because ultimately it will benefit you and get you your pension and lump sum paid quicker. So yeah, notice period has been a contributing factor in that, you know, some people might be on 3 months, for example.
So just to continue on that, so is there any communication from you or some sort of pamphlets or leaflets or emails which the employers can share to people who are retiring, say 6 months before they're retiring or 3 months before they're retiring? It's typically
We're starting.
1 month.
Yeah, we're starting to add to that. So there are some messages on the website, but then you've got to know to go to the website to find those. So we're looking at some of our communications where we do that. Employers are being notified because we do an employer newsletter every other month, and that reminds employers too. You know, I'm not sure. Do Newham have an employer forum? Other clients sometimes have employer forums where you cascade that message to employers, and then they perhaps get together and talk about and exchange ideas as to what they can do within their own employer space, people services space, HR space to do that. And there's payroll providers as well, of course, Chair, that they need to understand that as well. I see James has got his hand up.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. Yeah, it's just to also just clarify a little bit just around the process and, you know, speaking firsthand of some of the practical or the impracticalities of necessarily meeting the 30 days before. So an example, Sheila, you'd be very aware of RMS for certain employees who receive regular payments outside of a basic contractual salary, makes it impossible to produce pension figures for LPP in advance of someone leaving because all the figures aren't known at the point that they leave. So we always take the basis of we don't submit a leaver form until a leaving date has passed on the relevant payroll. So if someone's left on the 20th of March, we wouldn't send through any pension information until the end of March. That would then just prevent the need for, as a payroll provider, submitting the data a second time and causing a query with the member thinking that their figures are showing less than they were expecting to as part of it. So that's just a practical kind of part from a payroll perspective as well, just to kind of clarify why Newham stats around the 30 days are so low is just we will always tend to send a pension information after someone's actually left on the payroll. So although someone may hand their notice in 4 months before they leave, they won't actually have LPP won't be made aware that they've officially left until that payroll is run. So that's why you always get a timing difference, and people always have a gap between their final salary and receiving their first pension. So kind of picking on Catherine's kind of point, yes, you do get sort of a delay if in relation to sort of missing information. Certainly when it comes to the admissions, it's normally a case of as soon as we are made aware of a person who may be impacted by an outstanding admission, they are dealt with on a case-by-case basis rather than it's just waiting until the admission concludes. It is fast-tracked and information is gone straight back to the employer to try and resolve the matter. So yeah, sort of that's just kind of just setting a little bit of the background. But yeah, in relation to do we have sort of gather employers together to kind of give them the messages of the importance of the 30 days before? Not necessarily, although we do kind of as part of communications go out to employers and sort of remind them of their roles and responsibilities. So
so in that case, is there a view that we can ask LPPA to change their SLAs, because if they're closely monitoring the 30-day period, and that's not very important for us, we can move that.
I think there's probably
we
a broader.
We need to measure the things which are relevant, right? There's no point.
Yeah, there's
bored on something where we're not really bored on it.
Yeah, it's kind of a conversation we've had with Chris and colleagues at LPP in the past around how we quantify sort of what does good look like for our members. Obviously, a lot of the stats that kind of get produced have been consistent for the last few years now. So although the 30-day stat is one that LPP are kind of showing, the overarching SLA and maintaining and working above the 95% is something that we have seen, gradual improvements and now a steady position above the 95%. So we feel a lot more comfortable. Complaints are obviously a lot less than they were sort of 2-3 years ago. So we know that the performance is kind of there. Yes, ideally the 30-day is not as relevant as possibly maybe elapsed times for the full member experience, and but that is conversation that we have had. So yeah, it's not something we'd like, but it's yeah, I don't know, Chris, is there anything more than that?
It's a good point, actually, because even with the best performing fund employer, you will never hit 100%. So it's about managing the expectations of what good looks like. It's a really good point. We're never going to hit that 100. So what does that look like? And in Newham's case, as James has explained, some of which I was not aware of, so apologies. It might be different for the Newham fund to others because there are underlying factors in that. I think over time and trend show a pattern, and you'd look for one of improvement. But yeah, I don't know what the ultimate target would look like.
Alison, sorry, I think.
Hi, yeah, no, I just wanted to just clarify. So if somebody gives 30 days notice that they're retiring, or even more notice than that, and they want a smooth transition from getting their last paid salary and then the following month getting either their lump sum or their monthly pension, it seems like there's a lot of people that have that gap where they wouldn't get anything for maybe a month or two. So how's that dealt with when all of a sudden their salary just stops because there's been a delay, either administrative or they may have followed all the right procedures and got that notice out there that they're retiring, and they've given the notice they're meant to give and expecting their salary to sort of smoothly continue into their pension. Does that not happen very often then?
So it's very rare that you would get someone who left in March and get paid their pension in April. It's more likely to always get paid in May, or if not later. We'd say May would be the more realistic one. If you get queries, that's when you're starting to get it later. But obviously, queries are dependent on the nature of the query and the timeliness of an employer coming back. I think that the main, I suppose, the point to kind of go on is we have it within sort of our member kind of pack where we kind of explain around the timings around there. The hardest part is obviously getting members sight of communications, as we've kind of touched on sort of in a few different ways, is that you need members online in order to, communicate with them, from just not receiving a pension board pack tonight, sending out paper documents of anything nowadays is not as common as it once was. So that's kind of why we kind of cover off that we know that's what kind of happened. The bottom line is, from I can speak from a payroll perspective, the only way that would necessarily change is if you increase the capacity within your payroll team to actually submit more leavers on time, more leavers preempted for someone actually leaving the organisation. Obviously, for ones who have just got post 2014 service where it's just care, it's a little bit easier. But as soon as you're getting into people with final salary, so we probably over time the position may improve, but still that reporting of a leaver won't happen until it's processed on payroll. That's unfortunately is the monthly return has improved the fact that payroll don't have to manually do a separate process to tell LPP that someone's left. They will know someone's left by a leaver by a monthly return being generated with a leaving date on there. But if they have got final salary, then LPP will still require information from the payroll provider. So
Yeah.
it is a timely. I think that is the frustration. I've received many of a complaint of someone saying, I told my manager 6 months ago that I was going to be leaving on the 31st of August, and it's now the 2nd of October and I haven't received anything. It does happen, and it's that kind of one of how do we have better communication. It's that chicken and the egg. You need to get more people on the standard online portal to be able to communicate. We have a lot of off-network people, so yeah. But no, I could open up to Philippa in relation to Juniper. How do you necessarily feel sort of your because obviously we don't do the payroll for you guys, but how is it similar kind of ways that it's not necessarily a preemptive nature around you're notifying LPP of a retirement case, and then how do you feel as an employer you communicate around the retirement process, or is it kind of wait for it to be done more centrally? Is there anything as an employer you guys do?
Not in particular. I mean, we had a recent employee who we tried to help because they were just waiting quite a long time. So the notification was sent, but they were waiting for that initial documentation to complete. So if asked, we try and support the staff, but typically once we've done that leavers notification, then we'll just let the process sort of follow through from the LPP in due course, unless we get somebody who rings up and says, oh, I haven't heard anything, and can you try and help and find out what's going on for me?
Thanks, Philippa. But yeah, hopefully Alison, that just kind of just paints a picture from a sort of an employer payroll perspective of just the challenge it is kind of around about the pension side of things.
What I would add from an LPP perspective, and I didn't touch a lot on this, but we are starting to see increasing use of automation. So we've focused initially, because they're easier, simpler than that, on the deferred retirement cases. So 80% of our deferred retirement quotes are now fully automated. So that takes a process out, and we're looking to extend that to active retirements. The online retirement form, since that's been live and we've looked at averages, the return of those forms now is within 6 days, which compared to 33 days with paper. So we're seeing benefits in time when we're dealing with it, which might recover some of that if you're not able to notify pay until they've finally gone. So there are bits that are still adding some improvement to the overall timescale, and that's why I say we need to just look at the trends over to time to see that is getting better.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the discussion. Any other questions for Chris? No? Okay. Thanks, Chris. That's useful. Thanks for the wonderful discussion. James, do we ask Chris to leave the meeting, or do we have him for any excluded?
No, Chris is fine to leave. The nicest way. Thank you, Chris. Sorry.
No problem.
Chris, thanks for
good to see you. Thank you very much. Thanks all.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so now shall we exclude the press, or shall we move to the other parts of the meeting and then exclude the press?
We can sort of move to the other items. To be honest, the exclusion to the press is more so if there's any questions relating from members around the exempt items. But as far as actually a summary is all covered within the report, kind of circulated. So yeah, so I'm happy just to kind of just quickly just touch on just kind of just the main kind of points around the performance pack was just covered outside of it. So just picking up sort of the other just performance side of things that Chris kind of didn't necessarily cover. So yeah, just membership numbers, just slight drop, but the main reason was to do with actives as part of the tidy up to do with valuation. As Chris kind of touched on, the SLAs they have been working above the 95%, although a slight drop from Q1. In relation to just splitting it down into sort of case particular high profile cases, so the retirement actives, deaths we've just kind of covered in 1.5 within the table. Chris took on sort of the help desk side and the overall satisfaction levels. And then yeah, there's just a bit of a breakdown. We've just tried to show sort of a comparison of just Newham specifically of how the registration on pension point, and just to kind of pick up on that, we are looking at options to try to get those numbers higher. I think the deferred is, you know, potentially is the hardest route because obviously your actives employees, hopefully we've got employers have contacts for them, but obviously deferred's a little bit more trickier, and pensioners. Just to kind of raise on one of the point where Chris mentioned about monthly access to the pension point, I don't expect anyone to have monthly pension access within Newham because we don't LPP don't process the pensions payroll. So just to make that point clear, that's why you won't see sort of that level. So that was more of a generic stat across users of pension point across all of LPP, not specific to Newham. So covered within the exempt item, which I can cover here, it's just a detail within it, is exempt. It's just around the complaints. So in the monthly reports in October, we received 4, in November 2 additional complaints, and we resolved 8 of them. So the carryover into December was 2 cases. Largely the complaints were centered around the timeliness of payments, which is kind of ample of the last topic, and issue in relation to the advice around the contact center. And then as far as IDRP, we just received the one in October. So all the details are necessary, or further details are just covered within the exempt pack, but I wasn't necessarily going to go through them, but I had to just put the caveat to say that we would need to go into the exempt if there was any questions in relation to the exempt items, the exempt appendices, but they were just the monthly packs, whereas we can present the quarterly one as a public document. I have asked Chris to take away whether in future we can make the monthly pack access to the public, because I'm struggling to see really why it's not a public document.
Great, thanks, James. So in terms of the pension point membership for retired people, is the issue only for the retired people or also the deferred ones?
So I didn't kind of catch that. When did you say is the issue the same for
so you
retired as
mentioned
it is for deferred?
So you mentioned that increasing the membership for active members is a lot easier, but you
Active
said
is
it's for deferred.
yeah, it's just more because you have the control from an employer perspective to kind of push the membership with your staff. So you don't necessarily need to know who's part of the LGPS, but you can have, when you do sort of standard employer communications about pension, you can cover pension point, and that hopefully can increase the stats around that. You don't kind of have the same luxury with the deferred side, so that's normally where people are picking it up historically when it was
So
referring.
do you have any thoughts on how to improve that?
It's data. It's just how we're necessarily. So the honest way is that you end up having to essentially write to memberships. So we obviously have email data at the point of the leaving, but as Chris kind of said, there's the issue around if people kind of have submitted sort of personal, work contacts instead of personal contacts. So that's kind of where it is. It's definitely a manual sort of labor intensive exercise to try and increase certainly the membership in these areas, but yeah, we will kind of pick that up sort of in the next year as part of a sort of an overall communication strategy, a bit more around some more specific stuff, and work with LPP on how others have been more successful around these areas. So apologies, I don't have some.
Can you add this to one of the points that the board can get sight on for this? Because improving membership and improving access to such things is I think part of our remit, and I think it'll be good if we can get an update.
Yeah, we'll keep the performance update because I've slightly reformatted the obviously with Jackie going on maternity, I kind of reformatted slightly the performance update. As you might remember, James Grafton normally presents the performance update as well, but he is due to leave us in February. So quite a lot of change, but I kind of tweaked the report. So I want to show the comparison with the movement on the pension points. So I'll cover that as a standing item so you can actually see the stats, and then we'll just include what we're doing around it as well. So that's absolutely fine.
No, that's useful. Thank you. James, so that's the update on the performance, which Chris couldn't cover. So do you want to then provide us the committee update, or is that with Rakesh?
Yep. So no, that'd be me and Rakesh. So yeah, just to confirm, I'll pick up sort of the items today. But yeah, I'll pick up the admin side of committee, and then I'll let Rakesh just chip in just on the investment side. So yeah, so committee met on the 10th of December. I gave the standard, I know it's saying Jackie, but I gave the committee update just in case anyone wants to recording back and thought Jackie had a bad day, but it was actually me presenting it. So the main thing really was covering a lot to do with our admin update. So wanted to cover up around the consultations that are coming up, within there kind of referring to sort of the impact and just raising sort of around the point around councillors potentially be eligible back into the pension scheme and other parts of it. But I will pick up the more specifics around the consultations sort of in the admin update. Then there was kind of just a point kind of we raised around the impact of sort of the consultation. So committee members were asking what would be the impact to the actual, would there be a cost implication for any of the changes of as part of the consultation? So cost of an LGPS senior officer, increased governance, all that kind of stuff, will that increase, as well as their actual eligibility to join the pension scheme themselves as councillors? What will the cost implications be? Will that be factored in? So all that was kind of discussed, and we just kind of ran through and touched on the performance. So they reasonably happy with the performance update, although one of the councillors raised a point around LPP's use of AI. So I kind of just took that one away just to speak with LPP. Sorry. Yeah, so the use of AI just for board's benefit. So they were kind of looking at AI to help monitor user behavior, and with the overall aim is kind of just studying it a bit more, or using AI to help. That may help in the long term around cyber risk as well, just to kind of look at if there's any abnormal activity, looking at how they can improve the contact center using an AI technology to try and reduce the customer call background noise. They're using Copilot, and they've also created a number of AI supported videos to support sort of member guidance and also internal guidance, which they kind of advised that the member AI generated videos have kind of generated already just shy of 2,500 views by total members of within the LGPS within LPP. So yeah, so kind of followed up with that action, and then yeah, the same point that you guys made around the trade-off between payroll timing of sending a lever and opposed to the member actually receiving their benefits. So we did actually discuss that item because the 30-day did get raised there as well. Kesh, are you happy to pick up the business plan update?
Yep, that's fine. So on the business plan, the key things that we're looking at, we're updating members on, is actually the transition of assets. So as part of government regulation, as part of the pooling, our assets need to be transitioned by the 31st of March this year. We're currently in preparation for that. We're reviewing the LCIV, the London Civ investment manager agreements and the letters of engagement, etc. So that's all being prepared as we speak. And obviously we're looking and we're consulting with the London Civ on our investment strategy and where there are opportunities to transition other assets across. So I think I may have, when we spoke last time at the last board, I did mention that we are looking at our property holding to go across. There will be minimal transition, there will be no transition costs because in effect, it'll just be labelled under the London Civ. So CBRE, who manage our portfolio, will in essence still be in charge and still running that portfolio. Similarly, that will happen with a lot of our private markets because although some of these assets are available with the London Civ, they're still exploring options on the private equity side. And some of their other holdings that we have in the private markets are just in the process of winding down, and others are looking for a portfolio rebalancing. So whatever we can rebalance within the London Civ, we are already looking at. But outside of that, we will just essentially have them under a generic investment manager agreement. And then as those particular investments wind down, new opportunities will be available on the London Civ platform for us to then obviously explore. That was the key thing that we discussed. In addition, we did, I think at the last board we had the Barnett Waddingham went through the funding strategy statement. So unfortunately, due to time, we had to defer that at our last committee, but we're going through the funding strategy statement with members at the quarterly strategy review meeting in a couple of weeks. And you may recall that I also spoke about training for the pension fund annual report. So we will provide some training at the next pension board meeting so that members are sort of up to speed in terms of how that report comes together. So that was the key things within
those are all my questions. Thank you.
All right, okay.
Oh, sorry, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, that's fine. So those are the key areas within the business plan update. So the big one is obviously the transition of assets to the London Civ, and we're obviously working through that at this moment. Then in terms of the investment strategy, essentially key things to point out is that the fund is at its highest valuation that it's ever had. This is over 2 billion now. We're obviously waiting the final results of the triennial valuation, which hopefully with the fund performing well will have an impact in a reduction in the contribution rate, but those results need to be finalized as yet. And then, as I did mention earlier, we'll be providing a training session for both board members and committee members on the triennial valuation with the fund's actuary. And
is that the same training day about the audit or the accounts, or is it a separate training?
No, that's separate. It'll be separate training. The training that should be done on the triennial valuation will be provided by our actuaries, Barnett Waddingham. The pension fund training will be done by officers. Okay.
So the former is from the I thought it was about the year-end accounts.
Yeah, the year-end accounts. The next board meeting, one of my colleagues will attend, and we'll provide you an overview of the pension fund annual
Okay.
report. Yeah.
So, okay, there's officers from your team. Okay, got it.
And that really is it. That's a snapshot in terms of what happened. Again, we are working with the London Civ in terms of finalising our strategy, our strategic asset allocation strategy, which is one of the key indicators before we move our assets across, and we'll be finalising that and then presenting it to committee members in our meeting in end of March. We've had to cram meetings together because we had a cancellation of our meeting back in last year, so we just wanted we needed to ensure that we had everything up to speed.
Okay, thank you. So, is there any point raised for the board by the committee?
Any point raised by the board? Was there? I can't recall.
As
Was there
in,
anything?
was there any action for the pension board in the committee?
No,
Or
I think the
anything they
thing that
wanted us to
what we did do is that when we had the presentation of the funding strategy statement, although that's been deferred, we did agree to circulate it to all stakeholders, which has been done for their comment. And then when we go to the next committee that we'll have in February, we'll then ratify if there are no further additions or any comments subsequent to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rakesh.
It's okay. Back to you, James.
James, is the next section with you? The
James, you're on mute.
Oh, I hate that. You wouldn't think I'd learn after 5 years. Thank you. All right. Yes, it is with me. Sorry. Yeah, so the administration update. So yeah, just picking up. So very similar to what we kind of presented to committee. And obviously I think Rakesh kind of alluded to, but we are kind of a bit concatenated our kind of meetings up a little bit. We do seem to have quite a few meetings in quick succession, sort of even board. We only met at the end of November, so there isn't in by way of much of a difference in the update, but I will kind of run through still. McLeod, obviously, Chris picked up sort of the latest update. It's basically sort of LPP are kind of obviously now starting to work on the previous cases, but they're doing a lot of the data work in order before they can start doing the calculation. So that's just a kind of a waiting brief. Dashboard, as Chris confirmed, we got the confirmation at the end of December that Newham were connected. But as he confirmed, that doesn't mean too much from a member perspective. It just now means that the validating sort of the quality of the data on the dashboard is what's being tested now before it's the public can start seeing it in 27. So just kind of picking up sort of those consultations. So one ends tonight, one ended in December. So we're hoping to get sort of feedback and kind of a bit more information and clarity on exactly what that means for the LGPS and for us as officers administering the scheme and the wider board and committee as well. So the access to access consultation, that's just looking at the minimum age, raising it from 55 to 57, reopening the pension scheme to elected mayors and councillors with effect from April. So that would essentially mean that members will have access to the care aspect of the LGPS. They won't be able to transfer any LGPS service into sort of their new pension, or sort of if they start contributing, but they would have to actively enroll into it, so they wouldn't get re-enrolled, or automatic enrollment wouldn't apply for them. Academy is one of the obviously the risks that we'd have for us is any academies would have the right to ask to move the fund they're in to essentially a larger fund that controls more of their membership or more of their employees within their organisation. So that could be sort of a particularly cleaner or catering company who has a number of contracts with schools all around the country, and then they may have predominantly their base up in one LGPS fund in another authority, and they could have an easier route to kind of transferring that them memberships out of Newham. Something to just consider. And then which will tie into the employer update as well, where we've given it before around the difficulties we've had in admitting in new employers into the fund. The proposed changes will actually make it easier for us to admit employers into the fund going forward, because that would make pass through the standard route. So the issues that we've had historically was around the necessity that we placed upon in new employers to obtain a bond or a guarantor to access the fund. Now we want to kind of move the pass-through route, and that's why we've updated our admissions policy, and funded strategy statement will be sort of updated to kind of confirm the same, that pass-through is going to be our default, which thankfully kind of goes in line with the proposals of the consultation. So that's very positive. But obviously we'll wait to have the final draft or the final regulations once it's published post consultation. So in addition, there is a change in the Fit for the Future programme. So this is changing a lot of the governance structures around the LGPS. So the main things for us to be aware of is the increased need of knowledge and skills within board, committee and officers. So that will culminate in having a requirement to have a training strategy. So this will then put greater emphasis on us being able to demonstrate that, one, we work with our boards and committees and our officers to identify gaps in knowledge, and then how we address it. So we'd actually have a suitable training plan. I will cover just at the end around our current training offering, but we will have to build upon that. So that's what we've had sort of initial conversations with Barnett Waddett and our actuary just around what we can or can do to improve. Then there is going to be potentially sort of the role of an independent body on or an individual within the committee, basically to offer advice, but not necessarily as a voting member, but that's another kind of aspect. There's going to be triennial governance reviews, so that's another big change, and one of the biggest is the need to have a dedicated statutory post that would actually cover the LGPS within the administering authority. So that is something that will need to happen. Obviously, post consultation, it would be very clear, but a lot of these changes, although they're coming from April, the expectation they'd be in place for October. So that October feels a little bit away, but I'm already kind of very much concerned that October is not that far away in reality if you want to actually make any of these changes, because some of these are actually quite material changes to the way that we operate. So you would have seen that we've talked about a training plan. I know Jackie kind of presented a training plan November, I think it was that. But we're probably going to need to essentially build upon that to turn it from a plan to a full-blown strategy that covers all aspects of the fund and all the stakeholders within it who require the knowledge to sort of ensure the effective administration governance. Rakesh kind of touched on sort of evaluation as part of the updates committee. So essentially the drafts are out. We're expecting sort of, along with the agreed funding strategy statement, the final rates will be shared with employers in sort of the end of this month, February time. Risk register, we don't necessarily have a update in relation to it. However, once we get the results of the consultation, we will be kind of adding to our risk register, because although we cover loosely sort of changes of regulation, we want to kind of be putting in the specifics about what is actually going to be impacting the fund, and that's what we'll be showing in future iterations of the risk register. So sort of how we're looking to cover in the actions that we're taking, but at the moment what we're kind of doing is obviously LPP is responding on our behalf in relation to the consultations, but we are looking to come up with our plans internally. But obviously, given that certainly for the dedicated LGPS officer, there would be sort of a funding implication that we do need to address as an authority, as a fund, to have that conversation, because that's going to change as well, sort of your constitution as well, being it a statutory post. So yeah, so just in relation to the training plan, I just want to kind of flag it that it's very serious around the training strategy. So although training plan, obviously we were going to develop and basically kind of refer you to the Barnet Waddington side and, you know, encourage active participation on clearing through the modules. The strategy really will need us as officers to be challenging your understanding of the LGPS to make sure that you're in a position to actively contribute to some of the topics that are getting discussed. Obviously, the same applies to committee, especially with their need to have or decision-making powers over investment side of things. I do want to kind of raise, we did look at a report from Barnet Waddington, and unfortunately, the take up of training has been quite low. By that I mean Tej has completed, but it doesn't look any other members. So I was kind of going to open it up at the moment just to confirm if anyone's actually been able to access the Barnet Waddington Enlightened system and actually done any training and actually got concerns that their training is not being reflected, or is it a case of there needs support in actually how you navigate the system? If so, then we're going to have to arrange a time just to do a bit of a demo and support you guys in using it, because that's the bare minimum at the moment, is using the Enlightened system whilst we kind of put together a more detailed training strategy. Philippa?
I need support. I don't know about anyone else.
Oh, sorry, Catherine.
I've done them all, so that's a concern that you can't see.
Yeah.
I've done every single module and every single one of the multiple choice exams and passed.
Interesting.
So,
That was a conversation I had with Alex, was around it looked low when we got it, and that's why I kind of wanted to raise it now, because then it gives us something to kind of go, you're the example we take back. So whether it was maybe the Barnet Woodin was taken on committee side of things, and not necessarily looking at our board membership. Sorry.
I was going to say, do you know when you did it, Philippa? I'm wondering, we did get it run by someone that doesn't normally run the report. It might be that she's just not basically done the report correctly, or it could have been that we got the report
in the last 7 to 10 days. But I have to say though, I do think that they're probably, some of them are easier for me than they will be for people like Kathy, because I've got that direct experience that Juniper obviously run the scheme. So I think, elements of it I found challenging, and obviously that's what the videos are for, but some of it, if I'm honest with you, I didn't need to watch the video to know the answers, but that's because of the benefit I have in my role that others don't. So they are quite tricky, I think, if you don't have any exposure to running the scheme or being involved in it.
Did you say, sorry, Philippa, when you when you actually completed, did you say you did it in the last 7 to 10 days, or was that something else? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, that may make sense. Also, you have to publish the papers in advance, so maybe that. Yeah. Okay. That.
I think the
I've
ask
done
was to
mine
complete
as well.
by the end of last year. So I think that's probably when you did
we
you
got
pulled
the
the report.
That's fine. Then Sheila, do you know when roughly you kind of completed a number of your modules?
Same time, maybe 7 to 10 days.
Okay, that's not so bad.
Where's everyone finding the time? I just about find time to have a wash, let alone sit.
I did mine on.
I'm going away. I'm going away on Wednesday. I've not even looked at a suitcase to pack yet, let alone try and sit. Oh my God!
I think
a long flight by any
James,
chance?
for Kathy, you'll have to check. I think this was a problem I had, where if you log in after some time, your password gets reset. So the password I had set myself wasn't working. So I raised a ticket with Barnet Waddingham, but then they didn't resolve it. So I had to reach out to the person who reset my password. And coincidentally, he checked his email, and that's how it worked. So when I spoke with Barnet, they thought I was, I had a pension account, and then they wanted my pension number and all that. So it took some explaining that I'm part of governance, and they couldn't resolve it. They didn't, I think some wires got crossed there. So I think if we get some people who to get flagged that people from the governance side, that's either the committee or the board members may reach out to them. Thought
Yeah,
that would
as
be
well.
useful.
So can I
It's-
just quickly ask? You say it times out. I haven't started mine yet. I'm going to start it this week. So can you not do like a couple of modules and then come back to it a couple of days later, or do you have to do it all in one go?
No, you can
Not-
do it at your
I'm
own
sure you
No,
rate.
you can do it at your own time.
Yeah.
Okay. So if
Well,
you
I think
stop
once you
halfway
start the
through,
module, you have to well, I think at the end of it you have to give an exam. So I don't think you can stop it during the exam. So you complete the module. I think you can come back to it, but you probably take you to the same screen where you stopped. But then once you reach the end, you have to complete the exam.
okay.
Yeah, like I said, if you having
Thanks.
sort of any technical issue, like I said, it sounds, Sheila, Philippa, that sounds fine. That we'll obviously pick up sort of in a later report. As I said, I was more concerned because I looked at it and thought it looked scarce, but then we were kind of talking between ourselves to think, was it an issue in how the report was running, like the parameters or anything like that? So that's fine. We can get sort of another one run just to make sure that it's running, because the same position, it kind of appeared for committee that there was a very low uptake in committee.
So
So we were
Philippa,
kind of,
if I come to the Juniper offices and sit with you,
Of course you
you'll be
can.
able to explain to me a
No
little.
worries. It is, I say, I do think if you don't have any involvement in the scheme, some of it is quite tricky. I don't know, Sheila,
Yeah.
what you thought, but yeah. How
I
much
mean,
Yeah.
I only know what I know, but anything, I'm always reaching out for advice because I don't know everything. I really,
Yeah.
really don't, and I feel like the goalposts are changing all the time.
I feel like James, and I sit on this board and I don't feel like I can, when you say about, how do we all actively contribute? One of the big areas that I certainly don't feel that I can contribute is when Rakesh, or maybe they're talking about the investment side, that I find really difficult. And I know, Tej, like sometimes you'll ask certain questions about how the money is being invested. That to me, I sit here and I listen, but I can't actively contribute, and that's certainly an area that I think we would all benefit from some sort of further training in, because I am just a listener really in those conversations. I don't have anything to sort of add any value to in those discussions.
no, I think that's kind of a consistent kind of view that you will get sort of across other boards, is that it does feel the remit, certainly for committee and board, is kind of increase, is planning to be increased around sort of the knowledge and expectations. But it's certainly something as part of a training strategy, that's what we need to kind of consider about how we can do that, manage it in the right ways. One is to give you enough to kind of understand the topics that come up and to know what you could potentially, but it's a very wide breadth
Yeah.
of a topic, as Rakesh will say. It's not a very small, it's not a very short topic of conversation. There is so many layers to it, but we'll do what we can to obviously structure it, because like I said, Bonnet One's got obviously their systems, but sometimes we might just be able to maybe do a session outside of board, which we'll hopefully prep in relation to. And
We've done
obviously,
that before, James, didn't we? We've done a
yeah,
session.
we have kind of done sort of, so yeah,
Yeah.
we will probably do something like that, but it'd probably be having to be a little bit more structured about how we do things. And one of the parts that, as part of the strategy that you're going to look to have, is to have a knowledge and skills checklist, which there is one from SIPFA. Barnet what I'm trying to, or a showcase their kind of equivalent of it to try and highlight, and that would obviously tease out knowledge gaps within sort of your board and committee. And we fully expect there to be gaps. The most important thing is that you've got a strategy in place around how you work and support your board to make sure that they can operate as effectively as possible. So yeah, so it's not a surprise. Traditionally, boards have normally steered more closer to the governance and of decisions and around the administration kind of aspects, rather than getting involved too much in the the particular investment side of things.
Pensions are a bit like, it's an olive tree. They've got all these different branches and they mean all different things, but it's just getting to the end of that branch, and I would struggle to get to the end of every single branch. I know I would.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's like I said, I've looked at obviously the need for a training strategy and the perceived more emphasis on knowledge. Yeah, it's concerning to a degree, but that's the whole reason. But like I said, our board wouldn't be sort of a unique case in how we're structured and such. So, but that's the kind of one we need to kind of learn from other funds as well, what they're doing, and try and get the best practice together. So that's, as officers, our role is to do that. So hopefully we can try and take as much of the concern away, and we keep it in a way of, we tell you what you need to kind of do and what we need to kind of support, so we can steer you in the right direction.
Okay.
James, do we know when when it's expected for the strategy to be in place, and when are we expected to implement it?
So all the consultations are meant to be, obviously, outcomes of the consultations are meant to be this side of April. They're meant to be live from April, which is obviously a very fine timeline between, because historically not many funds tend to operate sort of consultations until they become legislation or regulation. So the likelihood is it'd be April, with the understanding that you're going to be working to sort of an October go live. So my kind of one is we'll probably be given a draft around the final board before we break for summer, is probably when we'll give a draft for that, and we'll hopefully be having a final version that will go to the committee and board sort of in the September, October time.
I think is our next meeting the general meeting?
So we
AGM.
have, because one got cancelled in September, October, we do have one in March. I mean, that's one that I think I was going to take away to decide on whether we will have, because of the committee meeting also getting cancelled. It kind of means that we technically would report on or take anything that we're taking to that a future committee. So possibly we were looking at taking the general code of practice improve or action plan to board, and before we take it to committee. So we were earmarking possibly for March taking it, but obviously I'm aware that we've had 6 weeks gap between this and the November, and it'd be another 6 weeks. So it's almost like having 3 in 2 when we should have had 2 meetings. We've had 3. So it might be just one.
Yeah,
I think
so I
take
think
the few weeks
the
of getting an agenda together, and I might circulate with yourself, chair, and then we can make the decision whether we have it or whether we just bypass and we go to the AGM in May.
because the point I was trying to make was, if it was the AGM, or we can still do it in the AGM, you can bring the analysis to us, and then we can discuss it in the AGM, because we can keep that as a key point for the board for the next year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Sorry, I can't make out if people are raising their hands.
No, sorry.
Wait. Okay, so let's look at the employer admission update.
Cool.
Page
So
97 onwards.
Chair, that's me again. Okay, so the employer.
Does this need a exemption?
No,
or
because
exclusion of press?
as soon as we reported to the TPR, it became a public item. The only reason we only kept it as an exempt item is because it was still deciding whether we were going to be reported to the TPR last year or not. So no. So yeah, so now it's a public item, so that's fine. In relation to the update, again, some positive movement since the last time we actually carried out a report. So this is just a version from the report presented to committee. So that was a further 4 outstanding or historic admissions completed since June that we were kind of just reporting on. Obviously, that still leaves 21 of the original historic cases that we reported ourselves to the TPR around. We are kind of still carrying out work because we do obviously have new admissions being flagged to us, but we're still keeping on the basis of the ones that have been 6 months since their contracts commence is what we're actually including within the report. Me and Alex will take away whether we start to just include, for board's complete oversight, whether we actually include all outstanding admissions within one report. That's one that we'd just consider sort of going forward, but obviously I just wanted to have that time because obviously Alex has only recently taken over from Jackie. But overall, it's positive. Definitely updating the admission policy, so it means that pass through we can push that a lot more onto some of the employers to kind of make some progress. Admittedly, I think we're still under the issue around getting in certainly the Newham schools to really talk to us before they've actually, days away from actually launching their contract. I can speak firsthand from sort of another fund. It's common that you don't necessarily find, get stuff alerted as often as you would like, but for Newham we had just such a backlog. That was the more unusual side of it, but there's definitely positive work going on. There's still work to be done. So yeah, I'm still expecting these updates to run sort of a bit throughout this year. I'm not necessarily expecting to have all of these concluded. I was hoped to get them done before the end of the financial year, but that's more looking like the end of the sort of the calendar year that we hopefully will break the back of these outstanding cases. But we are, liaising with all parties involved. There's obviously some who are historic are still on the route of trying to admit via a bond and guarantor, which is slowing the pace up a little bit for some of these. Catherine?
I've just need to backtrack. I've just tried to log on to my Enlighten and it won't let me log in.
Cool. Okay
Yeah,
then.
it's an
so
issue
you
which
know.
I flagged. So you probably have to reach out to the person. If you can check your email, Jackie would have been copied. There's someone from Barnet.
Yeah, Jacqueline. It was Jacqueline that sent
Whatever.
it to me, but she's off now, isn't she?
Janet is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you do me a favour, if you forward the email that you got from Jackie with a screenshot of you not getting sort of your access error message, we'll
okay.
forward it on to Barnet One to ask them to what's going on, and then at least give an explanation about why. Because I think it's a couple of times I think you've had issues with your login, so
Yeah.
hopefully they'll be able to explain what's going on with that.
Okay.
So James, any questions from the regulator? Did they flag anything?
No, as far as the regulator, so the regulator got reported to July. So we got sort of a response within a week to say that they acknowledge receipt, they're reviewing, and they'll be in touch whether they need any further information. They haven't to date. It's not something where I'm actively looking for them to come back to me on, because I kind of see it that if there is an issue, the ad, not necessarily advice that there was from sort of actuary, but kind of the view that when we were having discussions about whether we were or not going to report, it was one of the cases that it's largely, one, it's an employer is largely at fault for not having an admission crossing the line before they launch start a contract, but it's just a case of, so maybe it's not uncommon for it. It's just more so we've reported all our employers at the same time, as well as ourselves as the administering authority, to say that we've got outstanding admissions. So possibly that's the reason where what we're reporting is not the most uncommon issue to be there, and not many funds or administering authorities would actually report themselves because they've let a contract, or an employer of their fund has let a contract go. We just did because there was just such a volume of it. So no, haven't heard anything. Not looking to chase for any feedback from them. So yeah, at the moment it's positive, but the most important thing is we make progress. That's why we have the action plan within there.
Thank you. Any questions for James? No. Okay. So before we get into the press and public exclusion, can I just note that, well, I think, James, you just mentioned the next meeting is scheduled for 24th March. We'll probably review the agenda, whether that's the next meeting or if there's one after. The one after would be the next. Is that fair, James?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now let's exclude press and public. So I guess that means we'll stop recording. So in accordance with Section 100A4 of the Local Government Act, board is asked to resolve that the press and public be excluded from meeting for the any specific items of business on grounds that they may involve the likely disclosure of exempt information. So can we resolve
So
to
should I?
stop recording?
Yep.
Okay, thank